So I like to actually reflect on this game as it happened earlier this afternoon with the one of the five games in this Christmas day where it showed OKC versus San Antonio, which in this case they're in OKC this time. And mind you, so far, how many times has OKC already faced San Antonio this season? I mean, last time they played, they got blown out by San Antonio in San Antonio by 20 points or something like that. Yeah, it was a blowout. And prior to that, they played each other in the NBA Cup or an in-season tournament semifinals, and OKC lost that one by 2 after being up by as many as 15. So it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong. I think OKC has already played the Spurs 3 times this season, or it may seem like a little bit more than that. It seems, but so far it's already been, 3 times if I'm not mistaken. So, and I think this is one of the, I think it's their third game already where OKC has played the Spurs, and after they started going 25-2, that really hot start. Now all of a sudden they lost what, including this game, I think 4 out of the last 5, if I'm not mistaken. So they've been up and down. So and it's happened to some good teams and even great teams and even exceptional teams. So they're gonna have stretches like that. Even the great Spurs teams, those Spurs teams that used to hate when they had the big three and Timmy, TP. I'm talking about Tony Parker and Manu. Those were the great Spurs teams, and those Spurs teams played stingy defense, which is why I really believed who they are because they knew how to defend really good teams and blowing them out, like OKC has been doing and Golden State back in 2016, those Dynasty Warriors teams, even with KD, right? So just looking at it, the Spurs this season have been impressive. They're back to their winning ways again. The teams I used to hate, the Spurs, the Pistons, and even the Patriots from the NFL, they're all playing fantastic this season. And, they're back to their winning ways. They obviously got a new group of players. Most of them I don't even know. In the case of the Spurs, obviously I know Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson is still there, and if I'm not mistaken, De'Aaron Fox, former Sacramento Kings star, is now there, and obviously, the next NBA prospect after LeBron in the last couple of seasons, Wemby, is now playing, in his third season, and now obviously, he's now winning games with the Spurs. The Spurs are now after this game, 23-7. So now they won 8 in a row. This feels like the Spurs of old. Even with so many of these players that they're not as well known, with the exception of Wemby and Fox. That they've been, they've been this impressive. Obviously, they got a new coach. Pop stepped down, I think, just in the offseason, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to remember. But boy, whatever that coach did, he followed Pop's footsteps. And although their defense may not be nearly as stingy as it was in the past, they're still winning games like crazy. At one point, OKC was not missing at the beginning of the game. They were hitting 7 out of 7 field goals, and next thing you know, the Spurs just started storming right back, to close out the first half up by 3, I think, and from there they just never turned back. They were up in double digits, and especially going to the second half where OKC suddenly started going ice cold. They were just I'm just looking at them like throughout the second half, and they're playing at times uncharacteristic, and the Spurs have, as with the last game that they faced each other, and even in the cup game, but more so in the last game, they just made OKC just look totally pedestrian. So Yeah, I mean, maybe the Spurs are the kryptonite. They're kryptonite because the Nuggets were our kryptonite. I'm talking about the Lakers. Somehow, some way, we just could never beat them, even when we had Anthony Davis. And now that Luca came, all of a sudden, we just, maybe we can match up to them better now. We've beaten the Nuggets, at Denver when I think that was Luca's first game as a Laker against Denver and in Denver, where I think he scored like 33 points, and the Lakers were, they were surging at the time. They were definitely, doing better, you know, just right in the second half of the season. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows how long that will continue? So let's just see. They have not faced the Nuggets yet this season. I'm talking about the Lakers. The Lakers have not faced the Nuggets yet, and it's already December. Maybe going to the new year, probably next month. I have to see the schedule. But getting back to the Spurs and OKC, yeah, you can just see the screen, the picture right here. I actually took that picture, where it was already 30 seconds before, the closing of the fourth quarter. And that was actually the final score, 117-102. Is that the first blowout loss by OKC at home? Because I don't think I've ever seen them get blown out. And this might be the first actual home loss in OKC. I mean, that's probably their karma because, shoot, they gotten criticized for, with the way that they've been winning, just blowing out teams by an average of, 17 points per game. Guys like Rob Parker and Kelvin Washington and some of the other mainstream media guys have been saying, OKC has just been, they've been playing quote unquote boring basketball to where, they're not good for the league, or, in the case of Rob Parker, they are worst for the league. They are worse. They are the worst team for the league as far as there's no competition, this and that. Well, guess what? Now they really got competition against a much better Spurs team, and who knows? I mean, this is the. I mean, it's still kind of early in the regular season. We're getting to the middle, sometime in January, February, something like that. Soon to reach the trade deadline. So, I mean, I don't want to judge even after Christmas Day is over. Let's see going into the second half, and when I'm talking about after the All-Star break, right? The useless All-Star break, that is. Anyway, fantastic game for the Spurs. I'm not really gonna dig deep into the stats and the box score. I'm just going by observation. Obviously, Wemby played well, and despite him coming off the bench, and seeing the rest of the guys like Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox, these guys have been playing. These guys, I mean, the team as a whole, including these guys, have been balling out, man. They've been playing great. And that's how they've been getting all these wins, especially against some of the subpar teams that they're supposed to beat. Hell, they beating the Nuggets too. So the Spurs are legit, man. I mean, am I gonna hate this team the same way that I did before? No. But the only reason why I did that is because they've been winning all the time. Hell, they beat the they beat the Lakers in the 2003 semifinals, and we used to own them in the previous three playoff rounds, en route to our three-peat. I'm talking about with Kobe and Shaq, of course. But those Spurs teams were really good with Tim Duncan and David Robinson together, and David Robinson was still in the 2003 roster. He was already at the tail end of his career, and I think Manu, if I'm not mistaken, was in his first or second year. And that Spurs team is just getting better and better each year. You know what I'm saying? And I know we beat them in the 2004 semis, but dude, the way I've seen the Spurs play, it's just, I mean, this is why I hated them so much. But really, I respect all these guys. Guys like Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, who to me is like my most favorite Spur. Before Danny Green, only Danny Green and Manu, like my most favorite Spurs, So, and Danny Green is obviously a lethal 3-point shooter, right? So, I mean, yeah, I've always hated the Spurs like that because they also been beating really good to great teams like in blowouts. We're just like, man, how the hell did they do that? Pop is a hell of a gifted coach, and I know I've made fun of them in the past, but after a while when that dynasty broke up, thanks to Kawhi. No, I'm just kidding. But some said it was Kawhi that ruined the dynasty. A ticket alluded to it. But and he's doing the same thing with the Clippers. But yeah, once they got Wemby, and even before Wemby, they were starting to. I mean, the Spurs were still kind of good, and they were still good even when they had DeMar DeRozan and all that. I'm trying to remember who else was in that team. I just remembered DeRozan was there, and LaMarcus Aldridge. That was a great big man from the Portland Trail Blazers. So, but that Spurs core with those two guys didn't last very long. But they were still a pretty good team, just not nearly as good as the great Spurs teams with the big three in Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili, right? So, and this Spurs team is just barely starting to get good again. They had suffered the last few years, even when they just barely got Wemby as a rookie, that they were losing like so many games, and Pop was still there, and then Pop, eventually just had to step out with his medical condition. Eventually retired as a head coach, and now you got this new Spurs coach, and all of a sudden they're playing great again. So, they're one of those teams that's going back to their winning ways, and I see the Patriots doing the same thing since the leaving of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, the great Tom Brady, right? And I don't even know who these players are. And that Patriots team has just been dominating the league to go along with the Broncos, So, props to the Spurs, man, who have been playing great so far this season. Hopefully that keeps up, right? I don't hate them. I don't hate this Spurs team, And I'm glad to see them do well now that even with Wemby in his third season. And OKC, man, I know they're just having that stretch right now, but maybe they'll get back to their winning ways again. But yeah, this was a good game, even though it's a blowout for the most part. But OKC's been fighting. They made sure they weren't going to lose by 20 or more. All right, tell me what you guys think.